What's the difference between an MSP and an MSSP with two S's? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but we're going to be covering that in today's video. And believe it or not, that extra S means quite a lot. My name is Harrison Barron from growth-generators.com. We help MSPs grow, whether that is sales training, marketing, or even business operations. Before I get into today's video, I do have to mention, as always, to go check out growth-generators.com. We are in the process of a remodel, so you're going to see some things changing maybe by the time you see this in the future. But I would like to mention a couple things. One, we have a resources tab. You can come check out the blog, the Discord, the forum, or even the resources. I've preloaded that in here, some super helpful videos. But more importantly, all of our freebies are all in one super convenient place. I will make sure that there is a link down below to this so you can go grab whatever you would like. And there's some helpful hints and tips on here, like maybe if you're getting into HIPAA compliance, you can grab that as well, onboarding checklist, and so on and so forth. And hey, if you're a new MSP, I would highly recommend checking out MSP Heroes. It is a community specifically made for MSPs. It has training in there. It has everything from not only training, a private community, direct access to me, office hours to get you over those hurdles and the struggles that you are going to come across as you begin to run your MSP or your MSSP. So let's truly talk about what the difference is. Now, I'm sure you probably have already heard the term MSP, Managed Service Provider. Now, a managed service provider is what I love to coin this term, a geek squad on steroids. Now, I know that might sound super kind of crazy and potentially even a little controversial, but a managed service provider is going to provide services to their customers, in most cases being proactive, right? And those services can be proactive IT support, they could be cloud management, they could be network management, they could be really anything that they're going to be doing in that business that you need to support them. And a lot of those IT services too include, and I use this as my fake imaginary printer, but making sure your printers work, as silly as that sounds, making sure things are connected to the network properly, and making sure that, hey, none of the bad guys are getting onto the network or into the network. And that's usually the most basic level of a managed service provider. Now, typical customers for these can kind of range across the board, right? It could range anywhere between one person or one seat all the way up to hundreds, maybe even thousands of seats. And these are people that are using computers typically a lot, or technology is a vital part of the business. Now, most businesses, thankfully nowadays, live on technology. Don't get me wrong, there are still some old school businesses that are working off of pen and paper, as I aggressively look for one of the pens sitting on my desk, and they are writing things down, and you can help them. You can absolutely bring them over to technology, but there are some businesses that are just more than happy with writing things down on pen and paper. And that's okay. They might not ever be a customer of yours. Don't sweat it. There are way too many businesses in the world that rely heavily on technology when it comes to being dependent on something goes wrong. We need to have somebody to support it. And that's where your MSP can actually shine. Now, the MSSP is a little bit different than a managed service provider. You see, that extra S adds something pretty crucial when it comes down to growing the actual business, and not only growing the actual business, but the services that are provided. You see, the managed service provider is usually going to be proactive in making sure things are going well, fixing those computers. The MSSP, that extra S stands for security. So managed security service provider or managed service security provider. However you want to change those S's up, that is totally up to you. But in all honesty, it's adding a level of security to that. Now, security typically means cyber security, and that will entail for an MSSP. They're usually going to be offering everything that an MSP already offers. Think about it, right? We offer your basic, your mid-tier, and your premium, and every single one builds off the last. A MSSP is taking that managed service, but adding a extra emphasis on security. And that's the big differentiator between a MSSP and a MSP. And I think by the time I am done saying this, I'm going to stop using the words MSP and MSSP for the rest of the day. But I know it sounds quite funny, right? A MSSP wants to focus on cybersecurity monitoring, right? Threat hunting and threat detection, and also incident response. And most importantly, and this is typically where a lot of people aren't 100% sure, they're spending a lot of, or they're putting a lot of emphasis into compliance. You guys have probably heard me talk about the alphabet agencies. They are out there 100%. HIPAA, FINRA, FDIC, they are all, and FDIC I've actually learned recently, they have rules and regulations you also have to follow for them. GLBA, Gramm-Leach-Bailey Act, Sarbanes-Oxley. There are so many that those companies need a person, a dedicated team to make sure that they are truly in compliance. That's where an MSSP typically differentiates themselves from a standard MSP. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of MSPs that consider themselves MSPs that do compliance, cybersecurity, and that kind of stuff. There are also plenty of MSSPs that don't maybe take security to the next level, and they do a good bit, but they consider themselves an MSSP. There is no defining, hey, if you don't offer these certain things, or at least I have yet to see this, then it makes you one or the other. Typically, it's more of a conversation in the industry and maybe a little bit facing the customers, but customers typically don't know the difference most of the time. There's always going to be customers that are super knowledgeable, that have a good idea of what the difference is and which one they actually need when it comes to their business. So now that we've talked a little bit about an MSSP, what they're fully providing, a MSP, what they're fully providing, let's talk about some of the big differences between them. MSPs are going to put a lot of emphasis on IT management, and a lot of that is just anything that touches technology in that business, whereas an MSSP is also going to do that for the most part, but they're once again adding that cybersecurity into the mix, and they're putting a much higher emphasis on cybersecurity. It's no longer a, hey, we're going to roll out antivirus. They are usually going well above and beyond what's required for most businesses, especially if it's a non-compliancy required business. For example, believe it or not, a chiropractor who doesn't take insurance doesn't need to follow HIPAA to a degree. Keep that in mind. And it also depends on where you are. And there's a whole lot of areas in there, but sometimes they aren't required to be HIPAA compliant. In that case, a MSSP may still want to roll out services to make them compliant or take that security to the next level. And this happens in a lot of different industries that nobody really talks about in many cases. The other difference is the MSP has a very specialized skill set and more of a general IT knowledge. They can be specialists in certain niches, which is important. So, for example, if you're going to focus on the medical niche, maybe even starting out with dentists, different doctors, surgeons, anything like that. Whereas the MSSP is going to have much more specialized security expertise. They are going to know quite a bit more. And I would say most cybersecurity experts are ultimately going to end up in the MSSP. Not all, but most of them, because they're just taking it to the next level. And I think where the beautiful part about this is, fast forward, you could be a good combination of both. You could be an MSSP that does a lot of tech support, and you may want to be an MSP to start and then gradually graduate into that MSSP role. And it really comes down to two main factors, right? The first one being is, what do you want out of your business, right? And what kind of services are you actually selling? You might realize, hey, I don't really need to get too crazy with compliance and security and all of that. That's totally fine. But you might want to start off with as an MSP and graduate across that. The second aspect of this is, what does your customer truly need? You don't want to go out there and sell a Ferrari to somebody just trying to get down the block. Hey, maybe they want a Ferrari, but if their goal is simply to get from point A to point B, having no technology headaches, and they just say, hey, you know what? We have everything in the cloud. We want our printers to print. We want to connect to the network, and the owners want to have full visibility of what's going on and removing people from the system when something happens. A managed service provider is more than fine. That's the customer's needs. But you might have customers that have to abide by the alphabet agencies, that FINRA, that HIPAA, all of that. In that case, it might make sense to focus heavily on cybersecurity. And all of those alphabet agencies have very, very different and highly specific requirements that you have to meet. So those are going to be the two main differences between a MSP and a MSSP. Now, this video, full transparency and blanket statement, is for the beginner, right? Somebody who wants to know what the core differences is. There are tons of deeper, more granular aspects between both businesses. But if you're thinking about starting out and you don't have a tremendous cybersecurity background, starting out as an MSP is a fantastic, fantastic option for you. But hey, if you're like, hey, I want to go start an MSP business and you have a lot of experience with compliancy and cyber, a MSSP might be the right move for you to start out with, or you might want to graduate over time. It's your business, and I empower you to drive the business that you absolutely love. My name is Harrison Barron from growth-generators.com. I hope at this point in the video, you've hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell. Totally meant to mention that earlier on in the video, but at least you have some good clarity, especially if you're getting into this industry. I love getting people into the MSP world. It is truly an incredible, incredible place with some super unique benefits that you're going to have to watch other videos that I've made to fully grasp how truly incredible it is. And for my veterans out there, I hope I did a pretty good job. I didn't want to go too deep. Other than that, I love the heck out of you guys as always, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.